Hello everybody, this is Wake Angel 2001 coming at you with a toy review. This is the Versus set between a Senticon Cascade and Senate Guard Autobot Javelin. I got this for Christmas, of course, from my grandmother. Well, you know, it's a 2-pack that has a couple of fembots in it. You know I'm always going to support that. I've never heard of Cascade or Javelin before. From what I understand, they are characters from the IDW comic, which, you know, I only have a few issues of, and they weren't in any of them. So I like how the artwork actually wraps around the box. So that's a nice touch. So yes, we're seeing these two characters. Even though I don't personally know them, they do look cool, and I will always support Hasbro whenever they make more fembots. Doing this brings us ever closer to the day when we can finally get Anode as a toy. And I don't really know a lot about Anode, but she is a biplane. That alone is reason enough to support whatever female Transformers they want to make so that they'll eventually get to her. Now, these are, of course, remolds. Javelin is a remold of Bumblebee Movie RC, while Cascade is a remold of Chromia. Specifically, the Chromia that was herself a remold of the female Autobot Combiners. Now, I remember I loved this mold, but I hated this one for reasons I'll get into once I get them out of the packaging. Now, I haven't really taken them out of the box yet, but I have... The thing is held closed by only a small strip of tape, and then it opens up very neatly like this. I like collector-friendly packaging like this. Inside, you have their instruction sheet, of course, along with some legal jargon. And as this is plastic-free packaging, everything's coated in tissue paper. I torn a little bit of the paper so I could get a quick look. So, yeah, that's how they're packaged in there. So let's rip some paper and get these guys out. Okay, so here are our two girls out of the packaging. Forgive me if I keep on referring back. Cascade is a bit taller than Javelin by just a tiny bit. And, yeah, like, they have significant backpacks with Cascades being much bigger. Like, I can see, like, they did significant retooling to the RC figure to make her look like this. Not only does she have a new head, but they completely changed all the kibble that will become her vehicle mode later on. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see. While this one, it doesn't look like they did quite as much. She does have a new head, yes, but a lot of the stuff I'm seeing here is the same stuff that I saw when it was Chromia. So on this one, it seems like it's mostly just a repaint, which is not boding well for this figure. So speaking of it, we're just going to get Javelin out of the way for now so we can focus on Cascade for this part of the review and take a look at the stuff that she comes with. Okay, future Wake Angel here. I had to do a little bit of a reshoot for the accessories because I kind of dragged on too long. Her default accessory is meant to be assembled into this kind of sniper rifle looking thing. It is very similar to the accessories that Chromia originally came with a few extra added, like the longer gun barrel. She can wield it in her hand, and because there's a second handle there, you can bring her second hand up there to hold on to it more like a sniper rifle. Okay, so you saw this little purple scope kind of flail off and go flying several feet away. That's because it's held in on this square peg that only goes halfway through the gun, so it's kind of exposed. I hate that. It does not really fit in very well, and yeah, it makes it awkward to have her to have the scope on. Plus, you can kind of approximate like she's posing with the sniper rifle being held, but it doesn't quite line up to her face perfectly. Although I suppose you can kind of have a... Like, if she was taking out aerial opponents, this would be good. Like, if she was on a lower vantage point. Although, I don't really think that snipers often shoot up at things. Usually, snipers are supposed to have the high vantage point, and then they shoot down. Like, it's kind of weird to have it going this way, but that's just a weird foible of the way her neck articulation works. Alright, and, there's supposed to be an alternate build for her gun according to the instructions, which makes use of these two little pods that go onto her side. And this is the alternate build for her guns, where she wields two smaller weapons. One handgun with an unnecessarily long barrel, and another sci-fi super gun kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the alternate build. And this is probably as good a time as any to bring in the original Chromia version of the mold to show off, where you can see, aside from a repaint, they did not really do anything to the Chromia mold except add that new head. In fact, even the gun is pretty much just Chromia's gun. They just added extra bits. So yeah, that's the story of the accessories for Cascade. Okay, sorry for like a solid 2 minutes of futzing around with some random pieces that came with this. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the actual figure, because that's the important part of the set. She has a... Well, quite frankly, her sculpting and detailing is very nice. I like how they actually painted the inside of that scope eye, and her other eye is painted as well. Very good looking face, and all of her details are going down. There is a lot of greeble on her body, because, you know, the Chromia version of this mold added a whole bunch of tech greeble to her. She has those little pegs that stick out of her body that you can put blast effects on. And there is one on her backpack as well. Pink, pink, pink. I don't really have any blast effects to go on there, but, you know, it's good to see that there's ports for it. Articulation, she has those universal shoulders, which are pin discs. They were ball joints on the original version of this mold, but they changed into pin discs for this version. Bicep swivel, 90-degree elbow. The wrist pick goes inside, more for the transformation than for actual articulation. Head is on a ball joint. It can look all the way up like she's flying. When it turns to the side, her chin kind of hits the collar, so when she tries to look to the side, she's also looking upwards. She has a waist joint, as I recall. Oh, actually, does she have the same issue? Don't tell me she... Huh. Okay, so when I had the Chromia version of the mold, this crotch plate would shoot off as soon as you tried to use her waist joint. Like, I made the joke about Chromia having to make ends meet in an Icon strip club, and that was a leftover feature. But it seems that on this version of the figure, it does not come off that easily. It is pegged in more solidly. Although, with the waist joint actually kind of being here, like you can make her hips wiggle, but you can't really make her waist swivel. So, yeah, this piece here infringes with her waist swivel, and a nice waist swivel was something that the original combiner version of this mold totally had. So, you know, that's a bit of articulation you're taking away. Speaking of compromised articulation, her hips have not as good a range. Like, she can get a good forward kick and a backward kick, but there's really no, like you can, well, I guess if you're pushed against it a little bit, you can get a pretty decent split. And she has a thigh swivel. But then you come down to the problem with her knees. Like, that's as far as they go before her shin kibble starts to hit her thigh and prevents the knee from bending any further. You have to rotate the kibble out of the way to get her knee to get her full 90-degree bend. And I do not like that. I do not like car kibble that is this egregious in having to rotate around to give her leg something of a natural range. This car on the Combiner Wars version of the mold, which I'm going to keep on bringing up over and over again, this sits... Oh, look, I finally managed to knock it off. There we go. Does that mean that she has... Yeah, now she has more range in her waist swivel. Yeah, this is supposed to sit up against the side of the shin so that the leg can bend without having to do this. I do not like that. That is the big negative point from when they turned this figure into Chromia. They did not fix it in this version of the toy. I'm upset. So, yes. So, and of course, you have the gigantic backpack, which no longer houses a combiner peg, and so cannot justify its existence anymore. My judgment for this figure, unfortunately, is the same as it was when they remolded it into Chromia. Oh, Except she does have better feet. They move forward and backwards on this little hinge here. And she has ankle rockers. So, yes, better foot articulation than the original version the mold had. I will give it that. But still, the thing is, this figure has too many compromises for me to call it good. Like, when this figure was a combiner limb, and it had a combiner peg back here, the compromises in the figure's design were acceptable in knowing that they were sacrifices for the gimmick of being a combiner limb. Without that gimmick, the figure is sadly much more compromised, and sculpting in a whole bunch of technological greeble to make the figure look more comic booky isn't quite gonna save that. Oh, hey guys, I was halfway through transforming it when I noted that the waist joint that the figure has still is there. So she actually does still have a waist joint, but when you transform her backpack, then the backpack locks in such a way that it seals up that waist joint. So you can't use the transformation as a waist joint anymore, which is something that it could do when it was a combiner limb. So yeah, that's another minus for this figure. This version of the figure. And here is that car mode. I gotta say, the car mode is probably the best thing about this particular mold. I mean, like, you can still see the full robot mode torso right there on top. There's, like, accessories plugged in weird places. Hands are still pretty blatant back there as a rear bumper. But it rolls decently, and since this is like a Cybertronian sniper kind of thing, the whole gun mounted on top of the car thing actually works a lot better for this figure than it does for most others. Like, this actually makes sense why you have a weaponized car driving around with a huge gun on its roof. But yeah, like, I do like the shape of this thing. It is a good looking car thing. Yeah, I will give it credit when it's due. This does not look bad at all. I will acknowledge it. It wouldn't pass for any kind of street vehicle, but since this is a Cybertronian character, the Cybertronian car works. Like, this is for getting around faster on Cybertron. It is not for disguising yourself on an alien planet. And yeah, I guess that's the best I could say. Like I said, this mold was okay, even good, I'll give it, when it was a combiner limb. Take out the combiner limb gimmick and you're left with an extremely compromised robot mode that has way too much backpack. And the changes that they did to the mold only made it worse. The original version of this mold, when it was a combiner limb, was way better than it is now. And I actually would have preferred if they applied this color scheme to the original combiner limb version of the figure. I mean, I know there's no reason for this figure to be a combiner limb, but, you know, like, if you're going to say she's a combiner limb for no good reason versus she has all the compromises of a figure that used to be a combiner limb without the added benefit of being a combiner limb, which one of those sounds worse to you? I thought so. So, yeah, like, the colors are good, the new head is fine, but overall, the Asenticon Cascade is not my cup of tea. So, she's not a bad figure, but, you know, she carries all the compromises of the Chromia version of the mold. So let's move on to something that's really good.